were also seeing things, I believe, from the windows of the aircraft. Tell us about that.
Well, I was looking at this object through my binoculars, and the chap behind sort of leaned over my right shoulder and said, "What is that?" And I said, "Well, I don't really know. Have a look at it yourself." And sort of passed the binoculars across to him, and he had a look at it. And at that time also, I realised that a few other people in the cabin could see what I was seeing, and I was passing this information through to Jersey Air Traffic, and I'm getting sort of a little bit agitated because this thing's getting bigger. So therefore, in my view, it's getting closer. And I'm wanting to know if there's anything in their way. So I'm talking to air traffic control again. They're assuring me there's nothing there. However, at that point, the controller did say that he had a primary contact to the south of me. Now, it would have appeared that that was to the other side of Alderney, which means that quite likely that this sighting was at least, from first viewing, about 55 miles distant.
Now, you've obviously worked out in your mind as you've got closer and closer that this thing is actually a lot bigger than you thought. How big would you say it actually was?
Well, looking at it through binoculars, of course, gives a false interpretation of the actual distance away. But it got to the point, at an imaginary point on the surface called Ortac, which is 41 miles away from Guernsey, that basically didn't need the binoculars anymore. And this thing was quite visible. At that time, I still thought it was north of Alderney, which would mean around about 20 miles away still, having viewed it for about maybe 10 minutes. But it actually turned out to be about 10 miles beyond that towards the southwest. So it was still 30 miles away. And it was at that point, having looked at many cities at night, through flying at night time, a city the sort of size of Derby, something like that, perhaps Milton Keynes, was a similar sort of a size than where I first saw it. So it must have been, in my view, between half a mile and a mile across. I'm pretty sure on that.
Now, we've got to say, haven't we, that something that size is not like any military aircraft that's around at the moment. We have nothing of that sort of size or diameter. Don't
know, do we? Not sure. You mentioned in your introduction that there's a possibility that there are sort of extraterrestrial vehicles. I'm not sure about that at the moment, although there has been a very detailed inspection by a group at Hallam University in Sheffield, with up to about 200 pages now. They can't seem to find any explanation for this, and they're a sceptical group. You know, I'm happy to have them on board for that very reason. I wanted to find out what this was. So yeah, I'm not sure I've seen anything like it before. Well, I'm definitely sure I haven't seen anything like it previously. For that sort of size of machine to be airborne, it's going to cost a lot of money. I don't think the British, or perhaps even the American taxpayer, would be able to afford that sort of a machine to be built and flown.
Absolutely. Now, there were other pilots that saw this as well, wasn't there? It wasn't just you.
That's right. Yeah, just coming towards Ortac, and like I said, it's 41 miles north of Guernsey Airport. At that point, a second very similar object hove into view, half the size of the first one. Therefore probably twice as far away, but exactly the same shape, with emitting yellow light, a dark graphite grey area, 2/3 of it from left to right as I'm looking at it, and the other object being exactly the same. And the call went out from Jersey Air Traffic to any other aircraft that may be in the vicinity that could see something similar. And in actual fact, there was a Blue Island flight coming in from the Isle of Man, which called it in. I don't think it's exactly the same time as I saw it. It's slightly later, after I'd gone over to Guernsey approach, but he was still talking to Jersey approach, and yeah, he called it in one object only, in a very similar position to where I last saw it.
Okay, well, last weekend I spoke to Nick Pope, who's the former UFO investigator for the British government. This is what Nick had to say about Ray's sighting.
Bowyer's Channel Island sighting is clearly one of the most significant UFO incidents to have occurred in recent years. And pretty much as soon as the story broke, I realised that this was an extremely interesting incident, and I decided to take a look at this myself. And I was fortunate enough to make contact with Ray Bowyer, and indeed both of us were asked to get involved with the Coalition for Freedom of Information, a US-based group which draws together people like Ray and myself. In other words, it's an exclusive group.